Dumb Husky and His White Cat Shizun is a BL novel. This is an audiobook made by fans for other fans. Disclaimer: descriptive violence and triggers for sensitive content. If you don't like it, don't listen. Thank you. Remember, subscribe and click the bell to stay updated on all the new releases. Enjoy. Chapter 37. This venerable one meets a god. The cold moon reflects the frost and snow, the cold mountain embraces the ice pool. 8,000 mountains cannot be crossed, the end of the world is at this moment. Chu Wanning wore deerskin gloves, brushed away the snow on the towering boulder, read the cinnabar inscription on it, and then turned around and said happily, "Shizun, we've arrived." The rising sun peak was covered with snow all year round. At this moment, a beautiful moon hung high in the sky, and the awe-inspiring moonlight shone on the frozen lake. The cold air was bleak, cold, and condensed, and the golden lake was frozen but not covered with snow. It was like a pearl made of glass, spreading across the world. The Milky Way fell on the earth, and the stars hung down for tens of thousands of miles. It was as if he had arrived at the end of the world. The group of people came to the lakeside. The surface of the lake was as smooth as a mirror, and a stone embankment led all the way to the center of the lake. Beside the embankment stood a stone tablet. The stone tablet was covered with frost, and the stone lines were crisscrossed and crisscrossed. Only the 4 characters, "Impassable path difficult," were written in a vigorous seal script. After thousands of years, it was still clear, and the cinnabar was bright red. Chu Wanning stopped in front of the stone embankment and said, "Only one person can enter at a time. Which one of you will go first?" Chu Wanning impatiently said, "Shizun, I'll go first." Chu Wanning glanced at him, pondered for a moment, and then shook his head. "You're acting rashly, I'm not at ease." At this time, Shimei, who was at the side, smiled and said, "Shizun, I'll go first. Anyway, I probably won't be able to melt the ice pond." On the vast frozen lake, Shimei walked along the stone embankment that could only allow one person to pass through it, and slowly reached the end. According to the rules, he condensed a ball of Ling power in his hand, then bent down and placed his palm on the surface of the ice. Shimei's Ling power flowed down the surface of the ice, and a sparkling white light flashed in the distance, one bright and one dark. Amoran held his breath and stood where he was, his 10 fingers involuntarily clenching and sinking into his palm. However, Shimei tried for a long time at the edge of the lake, but the frozen lake still didn't budge an inch. He smiled bitterly and walked back, saying to Chu Wanning, "Shizun, I'm sorry. It's okay, you'll try again after a few years of cultivation." Amoran sighed slightly. He was even more disappointed than the two of them, but he still comforted Shimei, saying, "It's okay, there's still a chance. Next time, I'll come back with you." Chu Wanning said, "Let's not talk so much. Go forward, it's your turn." In his previous life, Amoran had come to ask for the sword. He was a frivolous young man, and he had great expectations for Jinmuo. However, in this life, he had only come to get the sword. He already knew what was waiting for him in front of him, and he didn't have that kind of nervousness or expectation. But he had a kind of warmth, as if he was about to reunite with an old friend. Walking on the stone embankment, he knelt in front of the frozen lake. He bent down, his palm touching the surface of the ice. Amoran closed his eyes. His unsheathed Emo saber, the sword that had accompanied him to see the flowers of the world, to taste the blood of the mortal world. Opening his eyes, Amoran said softly to the surface of the lake, "Bagui, I'm coming. As if he had sensed the summons of the Master of Fate, a huge black shadow suddenly rose from beneath the surface of the ice. The shadow hovered above the surface of the ice, becoming clearer and more distinct. Suddenly, the 1,000-foot surface of the ice shattered, and Amoran heard Chu Wanning's cries of alarm from the distance. His voice was so far away that it was almost inaudible. The ice has melted. The waves were surging, and the water in the pool soared to the sky. A green-black flood dragon soared out, each of its scales was 7 feet wide. In a flash, the surface of the Jinchunchi surged, and the mist was dense. The flood dragon shone brilliantly under the moonlight, and it let out a breath of air. At the same time, an ancient wizardry barrier fell from the edge of the pool, separating Chu Wanning and the others from Amoran. Inside the wizardry barrier, a man and a dragon looked at each other from afar. Amoran squinted his eyes, and raised his head to look at the flood dragon. The flood dragon held a pitch-black ammo saber in its mouth. It did not have a sheath, but its body was thick and sharp, and it could cut through metal. The dragon changed the size of the ammo saber to the size suitable for mortals, and slowly lowered its body, and placed the saber in front of Amoran. However, it did not raise its head immediately. Instead, it stared at Amoran with its pair of ginger eyes, which were as tall as 2 grown men. The flood dragon's eyes were like 2 bronze mirrors, reflecting Amoran's reflection clearly. Amoran held his breath and waited for it to speak. If things did not change, then he only needed to go to the foot of the mountain to pick up a plum blossom and give it to the flood dragon. The old dragon was too polite, but Amoran was able to take advantage of it. Unexpectedly, after waiting for half a day, the flood dragon did not give him the weapon as easily as it did in his previous life. Instead, it waved its whiskers, and its pair of incomparably large yellow eyes narrowed. Then, it raised its front claw, and wrote 2 words on the snowy ground in front of Amoran. Mortal. Amoran was stunned. He clearly remembered that in his previous life, this flood dragon could speak. Why had it become mute in this life? After the mute dragon finished writing these 2 words, it immediately denied itself. It used its thick and fat claws to erase the words, and then wrote another string of words. No, mortals would not have such strong spiritual energy. Then, are you a god? The old dragon pondered for a moment, shook its head, and wrote. You are not a god, you have evil energy in your body. You are a ghost? Amoran, Zindeo, what nonsense are you talking about? I've only been reborn, so what's there to ponder over? Quickly bring me my blade. The old dragon seemed to have seen through his desire for a blade. It suddenly raised its dragon claw, which was covered in scales, and pressed Amoran's blade under its claw. Its other claw wiped away the original traces, and then added another handful of snow. It continued to write. Don't be offended. I saw 2 other phantoms on your body, which is really rare to see in my life. Are you a human or a ghost, a god, or a demon? Amoran raised his eyebrows and said, Of course I am a human. Do you even need to say that? He was just a person who had died once. The old dragon paused for a moment, and then wrote, A person's soul can split like this. He had never seen or heard of such a thing before. Amoran could not help but laugh when he saw that it was shaking its head and wagging its tail. What's so strange about it? Senior, what do you have to do to make me willing to give this blade to you? The old dragon looked at him for a moment, and then wrote. Then just stand there and don't move. Let me cast a spell to take a look at your spirit, and then I'll give you the knife, okay? Amoran did not expect it to make such a request. He was slightly taken aback, and began to hesitate. He was thinking, what if this old thing could see what happened in his previous life? But no return was right in front of him, and this Deo's power was fierce and ruthless. It was a divine weapon that was rarely seen in the world. If he were to reject it now, it would be impossible for him to obtain it in the future. After hesitating for a moment, Amoran raised his head and asked, "Yes, yes, but Senior, will you be willing to give me the blade no matter what you see on me?" The old dragon rode one stroke at a time. This was the rule, and he would not go back on his word. Regardless of whether I was good or evil in the past. The old dragon paused for a moment, and then wrote, "Even if you were evil in the past, I cannot stop you. I only hope that you will be good in the future." Amoran clapped his hands and smiled, "Good, since Senior has said so, I naturally have no reason to refuse. Please cast a spell to see it, Senior." The old dragon raised his body slightly, arching his body that was brimming with light and colors. He breathed out a mouthful of air, and a layer of bright red light appeared in his eyes. Amoran raised his head and discovered that the layer of red light was actually a thin layer of mist. The blood mist gradually deepened, and gradually covered his reflection. After a long while, when the mist slowly dissipated, the old dragon's eyes once again saw his own standing figure. However, this time, Amoran suddenly discovered that other than himself, there were also two blurry shadows reflected in the dragon's eyes, one on the left and one on the right, faintly standing behind him. Amoran was shocked, and immediately turned his head to look, but there was nothing behind him, and there was only a vast expanse of white snow. Where could he see the shadow of anyone else? When he turned his head again, the two figures in the dragon's eyes became clearer and clearer, as if something submerged in the water was slowly rising to the surface. Amoran stared at them for a while, and suddenly felt that the two figures seemed very familiar. He could not help but take 2 steps forward, and unexpectedly, the two figures in the dragon's eyes suddenly opened their eyes instead of closing their eyes. Shimei. Chu Wanning. Amoran did not expect it to be them. He staggered 2 steps, took a few steps back, and stuttered, unable to complete his sentence. "What this is?" The 3 figures in the old dragon's eyes stood quietly, their faces calm and expressionless, gazing peacefully into the distance. Amoran was horrified. After a while, he saw the red mist of blood rising again, and the figures in the dragon's eyes began to blur from clarity, and finally disappeared. The old dragon snorted, his dragon whiskers trembling, and then he quickly wrote, "I can't see through it. In all my life, I have never seen anyone with the imprint of 2 other people on their soul. This is really strange. My soul, has their imprint." Yes. After the old dragon finished writing, he paused for a moment, and then wrote, "I don't know what happened to you, and what kind of obsession do you have to be able to entangle yourself with someone else in your soul?" Amoran stared at the few crooked lines of words on the snowy ground, as if he was choking, and his face slowly turned red. His obsession with Shimei was deep in his bones, and even if it was engraved in his soul, even if the old dragon saw that he could see Shimei with him, he wouldn't think it was a big deal. But Chu Wanning. What's going on? What kind of obsession could he possibly have with Chu Wanning? Could it be that excessive hatred was also a form of entanglement? The man and the dragon were both deep in thought, so much so that the lake water around Jinjinchi slightly wrinkled, but they didn't notice. When the monstrous waves broke through the sky, and the waves split the shore, it was already too late. The lake water around Jinjinchi was split into 2 halves as if it was cut by a knife or an axe. The two halves gushed into the sky, and two groups of beasts emerged from the raging waves. They had the bodies of leopards and the heads of oxen. Although they weren't as big as the old dragon, the horns on their heads were cold, and their claws were sharp. Hundreds of beasts gathered together, but the old dragon wasn't afraid. He looked sideways with his yellow eyes. Amoran asked, "What's going on?" The old dragon paused and wrote, "Go Chen Shanggong." As soon as he saw these 4 words, Amoran felt like he was struck by lightning. Go Chen Shanggong was the master of killing and conquering weapons in the world. This incipient god realm master had created the first sword in the world to help Fu Shi defeat the devil pirates. That majestic incipient god realm master was these hundreds of beasts? It was too scary. Amoran couldn't accept it. While he was in a daze, he suddenly heard the sound of the sun. The sun was an ancient instrument. In their era, not many people knew how to play it. As the sound of the sun got closer and closer, the beast horde gradually stopped. Eventually, they bent their front legs and knelt on both sides. After the beast horde dispersed, a man wearing a luxurious robe with a long sword on his back rode a kirin. That man had a handsome face with delicate features. He had a gentle face. He stood facing the wind. The night snow covered his body, and his clothes fluttered in the wind. The sun in his hand had a beautiful luster. He pressed his 10 fingers on his nostrils and started to play. As the last sound of the sun stopped, the hundreds of cow heads turned into water. It turned out that they were created by the illusion technique. The man put down the ocarina and looked back and forth at Amoran. Then, he smiled warmly and said, "You are indeed a rare person. No wonder the moon gazer serpent is curious about you. I'm Go Chen Shanggong. I live in the golden pool. The weapons in this pool were all made by me. It's a small trick. Sorry for the joke." Although the old dragon had written it down and the man had said it himself, Amoran still couldn't believe it. He changed his face. "You're Go Chen Shanggong." The man wasn't impatient. He smiled and said, "Yes, I am." Amoran almost suffocated. "You're the master of the armaments." "Yes." Go Chen Shanggong raised his eyebrows and smiled. "Later generations seem to have called me that. I'm really ashamed. I just had nothing to do, so I wanted to grind a small knife or a small whip. It was really annoying for powerful people to be humble." Chu Wanning calmly said, "I have 3 Jinmue." This Go Chen Shanggong was even more annoying. He even called the weapons he made small knives or small whips. Why didn't he care that Emperor Fuxi called him little old man? Amoran took a long time to recover and said, What about that? Shouldn't you be in the divine realm? Why are you in this pool? I like to knock and knock, and I often disturb the peace of the celestial emperor. Rather than being stared at by him all the time, I might as well ask myself to descend to the mortal realm." Amoran was speechless. "How long have you been here?" Go Chen Shanggong pondered for a moment and then smiled. "Not long. Only a few hundred years." "A few hundred years," Amoran repeated and laughed dryly. "Don't you think it's been a little long, exalted goddess?" Go Chen Shanggong smiled lightly and waved his sleeves, not caring too much. "It's not that long. Moreover, after forging the sword for the celestial emperor, I've expended a lot of my godly power. In the divine realm, where jewels and gold are everywhere, it's boring. But here, it's much more fun." Although Amoran was curious about the legendary god of slaughter, he didn't want to ask too much about his personal matters. After some thought, he felt that something else was more important. Exalted goddess, you didn't come out to see me just because you saw that my soul is special, right? Why not? Your spiritual power is rare. Gochen Shanggong smiled. I'm afraid it's a waste of my talent to only give you this Mo Deo. Amo Ran said, haha, it's alright. I think this blade suits me. That's what I thought at first glance. Gochen Shanggong smiled. After carefully examining it, I realized that it's not the case. Your talent is rare and I'm quite curious about it. So I came out this time to invite you to the bottom of the lake for a chat. I want to see which blade suits you the most among the thousands of weapons. This shock was no small matter. Even though Tashi Xianjun was experienced and knowledgeable, he was still a little speechless. The master of all weapons actually invited him to pick a weapon? Gochen Shanggong saw that he didn't say anything and thought that he was afraid and didn't dare to go, so he said, don't worry. Although there are many monsters in the water, they all listen to my orders. They definitely won't hurt you. The Moongazer serpent can be used as proof. The old dragon didn't say anything and slowly stopped at the side. When Amoran saw that he was indeed sincere in his invitation, he couldn't help but feel slightly moved. He said, then if I go, can exalted goddess agree to a request of mine? What request? The person who asked for the sword just now is my best friend. Amoran said as he pointed to the shore behind the enchantment and showed Shimei to him. He couldn't ask for the sword just now, so I thought, if I can fulfill exalted goddess wish, can exalted goddess also fulfill my wish and give him a weapon? I was wondering what it was. It's just a matter of raising my hand. Gochen Shanggong smiled and suddenly waved his hand. The ancient enchantment disappeared into thin air. This matter is very easy. Let all three of them come over. If there's a weapon that you like, just take it. Amoran was overjoyed. He didn't expect that he would find it so effortlessly. Shimei was able to get the Jinmuo, which made him even more excited than him getting a more powerful weapon. He immediately agreed to Gochen Shanggong's request. When Shimei and the others arrived, he told them about the matter. Shimei and Xuemeng's eyes widened, and even Chu Wanning was slightly moved. Gochen Shanggong was watching from the side. Suddenly, he seemed to realize something. He exclaimed and stared at Chu Wanning. It's you. End of the chapter. Stay tuned for more BL.